Welcome back, NextGen Nation. Thank you for joining us today. Welcome to this session, Career Planning for Today's Public Servant. My name is Pearl Kim, and I'm a senior staff writer here at GovLoop, and I'm ready to jump into this session with you. We've had such a variety of wonderful takeaways from today's summit so far. From the lunch keynotes alone, we learned how to be creative and innovative at the same time, how to lead a rewarding career in public service through this thing called passionate purpose. And we also relearned how to learn through 7 essential life skills. Now for this breakout, we'll cover what career planning looks like for today's public servant. 40 or 50 years of government service in a single agency is rarer and rarer to see nowadays. Now employees often switch between agencies and departments and even dip into the private sector to grow their skills and experiences. It's a common thing. But all of this movement can make charting a career path a little difficult. So in this session, we'll learn how to map a career plan for today's modern and changing environment. But before we get into all of that good content, and you may know the drill, we have a few housekeeping items to go over. If you're on Twitter, we'd love to learn what you're learning, so you can use the hashtag NextGenGov to share your takeaways. We also have some great additional resources available for you to download on the right-hand side of this console, and that includes this slide deck, so make sure you check that out. Also, we hope you don't have any technical difficulties, but if you do, send us a message to that Q&A tab, and my colleague Jessica will get your questions answered. Thank you to Jessica. In that same Q&A portal, you can ask our expert questions. Drop them in whenever, and don't be shy. We want you to get the most out of this training, so we want you to be asking questions and to be talking in the open chat and to be engaging with us as much as possible. And on the note of open chat, we do have that available for you today. You have to click on the blue group chat button on that bottom panel on your screen, and you can interact with other attendees there. We'll also email you a link to the entire event tomorrow, so make sure to check your inboxes. If you miss a few tidbits, you can watch it again, so no worries there. And finally, on CPE credits, we will be giving out 1 CPE credit for your participation in today's session. There are 3 things that you need to do. 1, you need to stay and participate for this whole session. 2, take all the polls. And the polls will be on the slide player that you see. If you don't see it, you can find that on the bottom panel of your screen as well. And 3, fill out the post-event CPE evaluation. That you can find that on the resource module here on this console, and also in the resource center in the main environment. All CPEs will be emailed directly to you once we confirm you've met all the requirements. All right, thank you for bearing with me for those housekeeping items. Now let me introduce you to our expert. Joining us today is Dr. Jamie Cruz. Jamie is the Senior Manager of Organizational Development in the County of Orange in the state of California, where she's helped establish and now leads the County of Orange's first organizational development function. She's a certified senior HR professional with over 16 years of public sector HR experience. She specializes in strategic talent management with an emphasis on leadership and organizational development. So I'm super excited to get into this with you guys. Without further ado, Jamie, the floor is yours.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And thank you for that introduction. Good afternoon, everyone. It is great to be here. There have been so many great speakers and sessions today. And one of the things that I've been noticing is this common theme of unlocking career potential, but not just generic career potential, your career potential and your career. And when we start personalizing that, it's not just a one-size-fits-all approach. And that's what I'm here to talk to you about today. Strategies for navigating your public sector career in a world that is literally changing every minute. So a career in government used to be like this image on the screen, more like a 2-lane highway. You get on and you just start driving. You kind of sit tight. You may slow down a little bit. You may pause every now and then. But for the most part, if you just stay in your lane, you're going to get where you're going. And there's often like those freeway signs marking that path along the way. But the world has changed quite a bit, right? We've had the pandemic for the last couple of years that just turned everything upside down. That was followed, and we're still experiencing the great resignation, or what I like to call the great choice. And of course, society just continues to grow more complex, and so too have our roles as public sector servants. So of course, all of that is in the mix of what we're seeing of record-breaking numbers of people leaving their roles and choosing new jobs, choosing new careers, or even in some cases, actually taking a career break. If you notice on LinkedIn, you can put in a career break as your career role at that time. So that's becoming more and more common. But no matter what your industry is, it really is an employee market, whether you are public sector, private sector, or somewhere in between. So let's take a look at the job market as of March. So just, a month and a week ago here. So nationwide, how many people quit their jobs in March 2022? What do you think? Go ahead and make your selection. We'll give it just a second.
It's a lot of people, though, all of the options.
Right? No matter what it is, it's kind of jaw-dropping, that's for sure. Mm-hmm. So we know it's in the millions. That's a spoiler alert here. Let's take a couple more seconds to get those responses in. Take a guess. You've probably seen it, even in your own workplaces, people coming and going, taking promotions, taking a transfer, trying something out new. All right. Pearl, do you want me to hold on a minute for this poll, or am I clear to move to the reveal?
I think you're clear.
Okay, let's see what you answered. So there's a little bit of love for all of the answers here. And the actual answer is 4.5 million people.
Wow.
So 4.5 million people quit their jobs in March. Not 2022, not 2021, or the last couple years, just a single month, March 2022. Now that's nationwide, but government is not unscathed. They are also experiencing similar moves as well. So let's try this one out. In a recent study, you're going to fill in the blank. In a recent study, what percentage of public servants surveyed said that working during the pandemic has made them consider quitting their government jobs? Is it 20%, 36%, 44%? Could it be as high as 57%? Go ahead and give us your best guess. Let's see where we land here. Now, one of the things we know is that people are always moving. I always tell my team, my job is to keep you here as long as I can, but eventually you are going to move on. Hopefully we're celebrating a promotion, but people are always moving in their careers. It's just a matter of, how frequently is that happening and where are you choosing, and is that working for that? So we know that there's a lot of movement nationwide. What's happening in the government? So I'm going to go ahead and share our results in 3, 2, and 1. Okay, so again, a little bit of love for all of our choices here. And the actual answer is 36%. So about a third of you were guessing right on the money there. So 36% are considering quitting. And what's important here is that back in March 2020, that was 20%. So in the last 2 years, we're seeing an increase of 16% of employees in the government workforce thinking about moving on to a different job. If we dive a little bit deeper into retirement, we're looking at about 33%, and about 28% are considering leaving the workforce entirely, actually just taking a moment, taking a break. And so that means that there are more opportunities than there ever have been before, which is exciting and also slightly terrifying because we know what it's like to carry a vacancy on a team, right? But there are more opportunities, not just in roles, but more opportunities to create influence and impact. There are more opportunities that are just popping up in response to the changing environment. So not just a new opportunity for you, but actually branching out in what we're doing in government and how we're doing that. And as much as there is consistency and stability in government, there's also immense change all the time, and we are experiencing that more than we ever have in the past. So with all of these opportunities, one thing that is really important, and this, you may be experiencing this yourself, is that people are moving into all of these roles with much less experience than they typically have had in the past. So when we look back to that 2-lane highway, remember you were kind of just get in that lane, stay where you're at, and you're going to get there. You had all this time to learn skills, to get that experience that was expected so that when you go into that role, you're ready. And now we're moving into those roles much faster than has historically been the case. So we may not necessarily have what those expected skills or experiences are right out the gate. And so really it's moving from this having all the time in the world to get what you need to be successful and kind of trusting that that will happen to needing to be ready so that we can navigate this changing environment. So when we look at all of these opportunities and openings, there's so much more than just open boxes on that org chart. And that's why we're here today. So, if you did a quick Google search on career planning, whether it's private sector, public sector, whatever it is, it's going to tell you tips, tried and true tips. They'll probably give you templates for the traditional career planning. But today in 2022, where we're sitting at, traditional career planning in government isn't going to get us all of the way. And so in this constantly changing environment, we need so much more than just traditional planning, because when we're looking at this, we're no longer in this 2-lane highway at all. Things have changed, our world has changed, our jobs have changed, our responsibilities in government as a whole have changed and evolved. And the reality is that a career in government is no longer this 2-lane highway. It looks a little bit more like this, which I always take a deep breath when I see this one, because there is comfort in that 2-lane highway, isn't there? But when we're looking at a career in public service in 2022, it really is more of the hustle and bustle and variability of what you're seeing on the screen here. It's multiple directions. A career in government is no longer linear for many. You can get on and get off when you want. It's way more flexible and a little bit of a choose your own adventure. I see a comment, it's my commute. It definitely is. That looks like my commute. So you're already building those skills to be scanning and be nimble as you're going through that. I used to teach a class on career development, several years ago, and it was very different than what we're going to talk about today. It was structured, contained, very plan focused. A lot of what you'd find if you start Googling career development, right? Do A, then B, and you will get to C. But that doesn't work as well in today's government. So I'm not saying don't plan. That's not the message that you need to take away today. Definitely planning is helpful. I am saying that we need to kind of dial up our ability and focus on being ready and being flexible. We'll still plan, but we're going to look at career planning a little bit more broadly than we have in the past. It's constantly scanning the environment, just as if you were driving this freeway on the screen or commuting, as one of our participants today said. It's very active, because success in today's government, being in today's public sector environment, is about flexibility. It's about being flexible, being ready to say yes to all of these new and changing opportunities. So today I'm going to share with you 5 strategies to navigate your career in the public sector and maybe even future-proof it so that you can be ready for whatever is headed your way. So first up on our tips here, you need to be ready to go. it's kind of one of those things, you plan your day, all of a sudden you get a call and you're like, yeah, I would like to go on that road trip. I would like to, go on the walk, whatever it may be. But you want to be able to say yes and not say, oh, well, I'm not prepared, and then you have that little bit of regret there. So when you are looking at a career in the public sector, it's about having that direction, but also being ready to go, because you never know when you're going to get the call. You never know when a new opportunity or experience is going to pop up, because government is changing all of the time. So let's take a look at a poll here. This one comes from the World Economic Forum, and we're asking what percentage of employees will need to reskill by 2025? So we're just, 2.5 years out from that. So what percentage of employees will need to completely learn a new skill, something they do not know right now, in order to be successful in their job? Is it 27%, 50%, 75%? Could it just be a small fraction of us at 10%? Go ahead and give us your best guess. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and close the poll in 3, 2, and 1. So again, we do have a little bit of love for all of our choices here. The actual answer is 50%. So I want you to think about your team at work and kind of segment in your mind half. Half of your team will need to learn, and maybe including yourself, a completely different skill than what they have now, and it will be critical to success on the job. So when we say, be ready to go, be ready to answer that call, whatever may be coming, we need to be nimble enough to be able to learn and relearn. So let's take a look at those skills a little bit more, because they're changing, right? I mentioned you need to learn and unlearn and relearn again. So on the screen here, you'll see, again, from the World Economic Forum, top 10 skills of 2025. Go ahead and scan those. I'll give you a second to do that. And then after scanning them, which one do you think will be most important to you in your career or role? And then put that in the chat. So let us know. Which one do you think is going to be most important to you in your career? Yeah, Kyle's saying probably will be part of that 50%. Me too. All of us. We're going to be that 50% at some point, right? Go ahead and give us some insights into what you think, which one of these skills is going to be most important to you. Include it into the chat here. Okay, so analytical thinking, resilience, technology. There's a comment about COVID, influencing that. Absolutely. We were accelerated light years because of the pandemic and the use of technology. Active learning, leadership, resilience, another vote for that. I'm seeing flexibility, creativity, problem solving. And it wasn't just problem solving, it was complex problem solving. And I'm seeing another vote for that one as well. Initiative, critical thinking, reliance. Yeah. So not only are we going to need to level up on these skills, but if you take just a quick pass through this chat, you'll find that your colleagues are identifying as, I'm going to need to learn that too. We're all going to be continuing to learn and grow. So not just reskilling in general, but we're going to be growing in some of the same areas together. And no matter what that is, no matter what your individual career path or profession is, that's going to be that foundation that's absolutely necessary for any career and your growth and progress here in the public sector, especially as we continue to move through not just 2022, but moving closer and closer to 2025. So regardless of these changing skills, one thing is for certain, and that is that success in government revolves around a few key skills. So it does not matter what your role is today or even in the future. Mastering these skills will increase your readiness as well as your agility, that nimbleness to respond to changes in government. So we're spotlighting today writing, critical thinking, influence, and learning. So this is true whether you have this wide open career path, or even if your field is a little bit more narrow and specialized. These skills are going to be critical to success. So there's this saying that public sector is a writing contest. So whoever can express their ideas the best, they move forward, or their initiative or their project moves forward. So whether it's report writing, sending emails, whatever it is, writing is that core skill that no matter your position, you need to continue to hone and fine tune. Even when you think, I'm a really good writer, there's still room to improve that as you're continuing to go forward. So too our critical thinking as well as influence, especially since government is getting even more complex. And some of you even identified when we were just looking at those top 10 skills that are going to be even more demand, you honed right in on that complex problem solving and critical thinking. And like all things, we need to be learning. We need to be learning about ourselves. We need to be learning about others. We need to be learning about the environment in which we're working. And that's all going to increase our responsiveness and readiness for changes within the government and within our communities that we serve. So it doesn't always have to be formal learning. It can simply just be the act of reflection as you're going through that. So let's hear in the chat again, which one of these skills have you spent the most time developing? Maybe you really concentrated on developing writing so far, or your critical thinking. Maybe you have doubled down on what it means to be a person of influence. And we talked about that earlier in today's conference, or even just practicing learning. Let us know, which one of these skills have you spent the most time developing already? Go ahead and let us know in the chat.
Yeah, and as people are putting responses in, we did get a question asking if you could expound a little bit more on influence. What does it mean to have influence as a skill, as a core skill?
Great question. I think when we're talking about influence, and there was a definition earlier today where the need of others meets the value that you bring. It's being able to have that vision of what we need to accomplish in the future and understanding, how can I be of value? What can I do in this role to advance the initiative? What can I do in this role to facilitate a conversation, to move a group of people forward? Even if it's just one person, how can we influence the development of others? How can we influence the conversation of ideas, and really being able to show up with your strengths and use that to help accomplish the greater mission, as it were, and really looking outside. It's not influence for like, how do I get what I want done, but how do I position myself as a way of service, as a vehicle for service to accomplish the greater good? What can you bring to that? Great question. So we're seeing a lot of resources, or excuse me, a lot of focus on learning and critical thinking, writing, technology, a little bit all over the board. I do see a question in the chat. What are good resources to improve writing? There are a ton, and the undergrad instructor in me would probably go on for an hour. I'm going to highlight just one that I think is a really good go-to, and that is Grammarly. I do not care how great of a writer you are. If you install Grammarly on your computer, you are going to start to see all the ways in which you can improve your writing, and not just your technical writing, but the way in which you're communicating your message, and see how you can edit that and make that even clearer. And it's a great tool. I use it all of the time. I recommend to my team that they have it installed. It is absolutely a go-to. There is a premium version that you have to pay for, but the free version gets you a really good amount of the way there. So I would definitely check out Grammarly. I am not paid to endorse them. That is a genuine +1 for them as part of that. So thanks for all of those questions. I want to add an additional opportunity for you, resource for your reflection here. If you're looking to continue to develop these skills, there's a few questions on the screen on how you can do that to start mastering those core skills. So one thing to remember is that you don't want to do everything at the same time. That diffuses your energy and you're not going to get the gains that you want to get. So what I would recommend is to identify which one skill could I work on right now that's going to yield the biggest impact for where I'm at in my career and where I want to go. And then focus on that. And then you can try out another skill and you can keep kind of like rotating what you're focusing on, especially as you start to level up on those skills there. So that'll help you identify where to start. There's also a couple of questions on the screen here, and I know you'll have continued access to these, so you can use those to not only reflect for yourself, but maybe even start a conversation with your peers, your mentor, your leader, get some additional perspectives there. So those are for you. And then the last piece that I want to dial into on learning is about making sure that you're engaging in reflection. So things are constantly changing, which means that we need to continually be reflecting, because our skill and the impact and influence that that has at a point in time with certain sets of people and with certain environments, that's going to constantly be changing. So we need to continually reflect, especially as we grow in our skill sets here. So again, this is another area where we could cover a lot of self-reflection skills, but I want to hone in on one piece of advice for you today. And this actually comes from Dr. Tasha Eurich. She is a leadership expert. Perhaps you've seen her TED Talk, and I'll put that in the chat. I definitely recommend that you visit that. But this tip that she really brought to the conversation in the leadership space is a little counterintuitive. And it comes back to this kind of dogma, if you will. We've always been taught to ask why. You know, when you're reflecting, well, ask yourself why. Maybe even ask yourself why 5 times to get to the root of the issue. And asking yourself why can be really helpful, but it can also be a double-edged sword, because asking yourself why can trap you in the past. It can trap you into biased ways of thinking. It can create rumination for like excessive negative thoughts. And so while it can be helpful, it can also get you stuck and keep you stuck. So instead, she offers that you actually ask yourself what when you're reflecting. So here's an example. So let's say that you are working on, you get a piece of feedback, you gave a presentation, and in this presentation, they said, you need to do a better job at giving the presentation. And so if we decided to ask ourselves why, you know, we might go back and be like, well, I wonder why they said that I didn't do a good job. You know, why didn't I engage the audience? Why didn't I do this? I might get stuck in blaming myself. I might actually assume that I think I have the right issue and then go down that track. Instead of asking why and kind of spiraling that way, if we pause and ask what, then we can move forward and we can hopefully identify what the best way forward is. So instead of asking the why, we might say, you know, what do I need to do to have a more engaging presentation next time? What do I need to do in order to have, you know, a more successful presentation? When did they seem disengaged or engaged? What did I notice about the questions they were asking? What you'll notice when you shift to what is that you become much more detailed and specific and action oriented, and then you can do something about that and try and experiment that, and that'll let you move forward. So this types of question that can help you reflect, but it can also help you move forward with action. And the bonus tip here is that this is also a really great way to address feedback. So if someone gives you generic positive feedback, and be like, oh, Pearl, you did a really great job. You know, you might want to say like, awesome, but what did I do? And so, you know, the way to respond to that is, thanks so much. You know, what about the way I was producing, you know, really resonated with you? And then that way the person can respond with some more specific feedback that you can do something with. Or if someone, maybe gave you more constructive feedback, next time you really need to do a better job with that client meeting. Thanks for the feedback. What's one thing that I could do that would help move me in the direction of, better managing the client? That way you're able to get more specifics and move forward. So not only does switching from why to what help with yourself, but it also helps with others. And when we're working in an environment where our careers and the demands that are placed upon us are constantly changing, we need to be constantly reflecting and learning about ourselves and our impact on others in order to be successful. So this is definitely a back pocket tool that I would recommend that you keep and use, whether that is reflecting for yourself or, engaging with others as part of that. And that's going to help make sure that you're ready to go no matter what, because you've mastered these core skills and you're nimble enough to continue to reflect and be ready to go, as it were. And that really, I think, puts you in a place of empowerment. It puts you in the driver's seat, so to speak, because you are in control of your career. So before, it used to be that you would just sit and wait for someone to notice all of the great work that you were doing. And sometimes you were sitting and waiting for a little while, right? As a reward, then eventually someone would notice you and you might get promoted to that next level. But now that next level is not always linear for many. No longer promised for most, and no longer something that you really need to kind of sit back and wait. You don't need to be resigned for waiting in line for that. Instead, it's really on you to own your career and ensure that you have the agility and you're nimble enough to respond to those changing road conditions. So some of you, you're going to have that narrow, more clearly defined career path. Most of you will not. But either way, the context in which you work, so the road, that changes. And it's really important for us to be nimble in how we're approaching that. So for a long time, the conventional wisdom was that we needed to know what that final destination was. We needed to have a clearly defined plan. It was A, then B, then C. And it's really that idea of the two-lane highway. But it's it's not even unique to government. Our whole society has adopted that and indoctrinates everyone. When we're in children, this happens in school. What do you want to be when you grow up? When, for those that are graduating high school, you're either picking a major for college, or you're moving into an apprenticeship for a career, like big decisions that have a final destination in mind. And when you are an adult and you're in your career, then it's that constant pressure to have the perfect career plan, to know, okay, here's where I'm at and here's what the next step is and here's what the step is after that. And it really morphs into demanding certainty of that final destination. But that can really limit us when we're so focused on getting to that next step, or committing perhaps often too early to what that was. Because I bet that none of you, or very few of you, if we had asked you when you were children what you wanted to be when you grew up, very few of you would say that you wanted to work in government or do what you're doing right now. Now, surely a couple of you on the line are going to say, yes, I always wanted to, be in policy or be an FBI agent or, whatever it was. But for many, we had very different answers. And it wasn't, I want to work in government one day, right? Yet here you are. And most of you probably can't imagine working anywhere else but the public sector, because this is your calling. And so the reality of today is that you don't need this perfect map to get started. And in fact, it might actually hinder you. So I pulled this tweet from Adam Grant because I think that he really captured this it might hinder you aspect really well. So having this perfect plan, it could work out, but it could also close you off from other possibilities. And that's what I want to alert you to. It could put blinders onto you when there are changing road conditions, or maybe when you're just tired of driving and you want to make a pit stop or make a detour, whatever it may be. So, if you think of if you were driving, where you want to go, you're on the freeway, and then, maybe all this fog rolls in, or it starts pouring and you can't see as well. that's the same thing. Sometimes when we have this perfect plan, it can actually create that fog that pulls us away from seeing all of these other opportunities, or realizing, you know what, I'm hungry and I want to stop at the next pit stop, but you're so committed to that plan that you don't actually listen to what it is that your needs are evolving as part of. So the point here is that while we want to plan and we want to be ready, we also want to remain open and flexible. Because the fact is that you don't need a final destination to get in the car and go. You don't need to know what that perfect next career step is to start managing your career, or to start being ready and flexible to be responsive and show up in government and find what is energizing for you. You just need to know what your general direction is. So again, I'm not saying don't plan. I am saying that you don't have to wait for it to be perfect, right? So you also don't have to follow a very super rigid plan. You can change direction at any time. And it really just comes back to being agile and nimble for what may come your way, because things are constantly changing. Even if you look back, obviously things have changed drastically in the last 2 years, but even if you look back 5-10 years, things are wildly different. I mean, I remember when I started my career, the big thing was, we should stop using a typewriter and we can actually create a fillable PDF form. Like, I remember having those conversations, and there would be no conversation whatsoever about having a fillable PDF form. We're completely digital. So things change pretty rapidly as we're going through that. So you may want to make a couple of pit stops, add skills and experience, try new things out, expand who you are as a person, as a professional. Just know that there's more than one way to get to your destination, and to find the way that works best for you as part of that. And a lot of times, one way that people often try to make the most of their career, or find what works best for them, is finding a connection by identifying a personal mission and then working for an organization where that is aligned. So looking at the bigger picture, this is something that I want to be part of. Here's a role that contributes a lot to that. That is conventional wisdom, and something that a lot of us have been taught as we're looking at career planning and how do we find that engaging experience, right? But often in government, this takes shape as public service motivation. We're here because we want government to realize its potential and make a positive impact in our communities, full stop, no matter what it is that our role is or how we're contributing to that, right? But if we think about that for a moment, probably everybody that's on this call that's here today is driven in some way by public service motivation. We've all chosen a career in government, but we're not all the same. We don't all have the same motivations. We don't find the same work engaging. So if we were to just connect with creating a difference in the world, or, making government a better place, whatever that greater mission is that, would fall under the larger public service motivation, there's a lot of us that would probably be left unfulfilled, because the day-to-day of that work, while it would connect with a mission, the day-to-day wouldn't connect with what we are energized by and what we really like to do specifically for us. Because the reality is that if we're in a job that doesn't play to our strengths or is demotivating, we're going to feel stuck. And that is not a way to show up for, 9 to 5 every day for 30, 40 years, waiting in that 2-lane highway for, the next position in line. We really need to look at not only what is that mission, but what do I like to do? What is energizing to me? And that really is go-to career planning strategy if we're to be agile and successful in the public sector today, is to actually look at the work itself. You can have that general direction, but looking at what work is actually motivating for you. You'll need to figure out what it is that you want, not just the mission, but the day-to-day and what gives you energy. So a lot of times people are looking at that next role in line, but they don't like it. They don't like the work, or maybe leadership actually takes them further away from the work, but leadership was always that next spot in line for their career as part of that, right? Or it starts with helping. I'm helping and I really like helping, but the day-to-day of what you're doing can be draining. So when we're looking at government, like, we're all helping people. It's about finding what you want to do in the day-to-day. So letting that mission guide you, but identifying what that individual course looks like in the day-to-day. And when you recognize that, that can give you a concrete idea of what it is that you're looking for. So I had a leadership coach one time that presented this idea of a Mary Poppins bag. And I'll tell you, it has stuck with me ever since. So it's this idea that every single one of us has this Mary Poppins bag. You can imagine myself and all of you carrying your bag, right? And in your bag is everything that you can do. It's your skills, it's your experience, it is everything that you can do, and you carry that with you always, right? And so just because you can do something doesn't mean you have to do it. Or even if you are very skilled at something, it doesn't mean that it gives you energy or that you could imagine yourself doing that all day, every day. And so this idea is, you have all of these skills and experience in your Mary Poppins bag, and you pull out what you want to pull out when you want to pull it out. And so it's identifying what is it that you want to pull out and that you could see yourself engaging with most of the day in that role. And then once you're able to identify that activity or that skill in your current role, try to see how you can maximize that, because that'll help you stay engaged in your current role. But for a career planning perspective, start looking at roles, not for like what's the next milestone or the next one in line, but which role, regardless of title, is going to actually create an experience in which I'm going to be using these skills that are energizing to me the most or more often as part of that. Because otherwise what you will find is you get to that, next step, whatever it was supposed to be from a traditional career planning perspective, and you don't love it. And then you become burnt out, you become stuck as part of that. And so this really requires you to not only know that general direction, but really tune into yourself and what is energizing and what do you want to be doing, not just from a mission statement, but the actual day-to-day activities as part of that. And that'll help you not only find success in your individual career, but a lifelong career, because you're going to have that energy that sustains you and allows you to be that person of influence and impact that you came to government to be.
Hey, Jamie, we have a question related to that. Actually, there's a lot of good talk good discussion in the attendee chat about how different people's careers have ended up. And in terms of energizing your day-to-day, someone asked, how do we work to get managers to understand that personal enrichment can actually contribute to professional enrichment? Sometimes it seems that if you aren't doing A, B, or C as outlined by your agency, it looks like you're idling.
That is a great question. There is something to be said for having a leader that recognizes more of a whole person approach and looks at it from the long game, not just the individual career. I would start having conversations with my leader about activities that are part of my role that I really love and why I love that and what I've been able to bring, because that is a strength of mine, or that's a skill that I have that is really energizing. Like, actually just start bringing that into the conversation as a way to describe, when you're in your one-on-one meetings, as a way to describe your experience or why that led to the great outcome that you had as part of that. And then, start asking, I really want to know more about this, or this is really energizing to me. So if there's something that pops up, I'd love to be considered to join that committee or to be on that project, because this is where I want to continue to see myself grow. The more that you can bring someone into the fold as a way to help you in doing that, but start with the context of your current role, then they'll see that as a tool for delivering on what they've been asked to deliver in terms of the team as part of that. Great. So great question. And I think it really goes into kind of this next tip, which is the carpool lane is faster. So I just gave you an example of bringing others into the conversation. Fundamentally, people can't help you if they don't know. So you're sitting here thinking, it is obvious that I want to grow in my career. It's obvious that I want to learn that. We talked about that one time. But your leader is also talking to a lot of other people. Or you may have thought that you explicitly stated something, but it didn't resonate with them. So the more that you can bring people into the conversation and say, here's what I'm doing now, here's the impact that that's having, and here's where I want to continue to grow. So let me know if something comes up. Then people are always more willing to help than we'll give them credit for. So get that out into the world. And it doesn't always have to be in like a give me, like, hey, if something comes up, let me know. It can also just be in asking for feedback. So we gave some examples earlier of how to get actionable feedback. That also not only gives you the impact in the moment, because now you know how you're being perceived by others, you're able to change your behavior for impact, but it also gives them the impression that you're serious. You are here, you're constantly learning and growing, you're open to feedback, and you are ready to move and grow in your career. And so that impression can be really helpful as well. Share your goals, just put them out into the world. Again, like, people can't help if they don't know. March down to the mentor store and pick up a mentor. I'm being facetious, of course, but it can be as easy as that. It doesn't have to be this incredibly formal, scary moment of, will you be my mentor? It can be as simple as finding someone, no matter their level, maybe it's even a peer, and going to them and say, I noticed that you really do this skill really well. I'm looking to grow in that. Would it be okay if we met for like 30 minutes, maybe sometime next week? Wanted to ask you a couple questions. And that can then morph into a more formal mentorship role. But everyone wants to be of value to someone else and help them learn and grow, especially in the public sector. So don't be afraid to ask for help, because when we create this community around us, not only does that help us continue to learn and grow, but it signals to us what other opportunities are available. People share more resources, and that makes sure that we stay nimble and responsive to not only growing ourselves, but actually moving out throughout into the work environment and the different opportunities. So one of the things that I like to recommend, and this will be available for you as a reference, is a lot of times we know what the next role is in our career path. Sometimes you don't, and that's okay. You can just find someone who you think might have an interesting role and actually go interview them. Say, hey, I'm thinking about my career, wondered if I could have 15 minutes of your time, and ask them one or more questions here on the screen. And this will give you some insights that, again, you can act on as early as possible, and also give you an indication if this is something that you want to do going forward. And again, it doesn't have to be that final destination. It can just be that next step, and then you can continue to evolve as you're going forward. And that really brings us to this next tip, which is knowing the lay of the land. So again, it can just be that next step, but you need to understand what is the context in which I'm operating to even take the next step as part of that. So within each of your environments, things get done a certain way. There's a structure, money is spent a certain way, is prioritized. You have a culture, you have policies. So if you're looking for how you can navigate your career and what that next step might be, you need to understand, where are you even navigating? Not just, the role itself, but the environment in which you are fulfilling that role. And so this is done by asking questions, observing, looking at what is the decision criteria, what's tolerated, what's not. A lot of times these are the unspoken rituals and actions within an organization. But if you become intentional about observing that and kind of taking it all in, that can give you a lot of information about what success looks like in your role, in your next role, and really navigating that career to be a person of impact and influence, regardless of what that specific role is. Now, another way that you can understand your organization is to actually just move around. Try out different teams, try out different divisions, departments even. Understand how things get done and what success looks like. And then that way you know how to navigate it. I always say that government, like success in government, is kind of like an action movie. So if you could imagine that, you know, that moment when someone is trying to steal like the vase and those like red lasers are across the room and you have to like tiptoe and flex and get through there. So the faster that you figure out how to actually, you know, navigate all of those red lasers, then the faster you'll be able to have that success, right? But in our roles, instead of stealing something, you know, we're looking at making policy. We're looking at moving an initiative forward, creating safer communities, making an impact. And so if you are able to figure out that lay of the land and how to navigate those red lasers, then you'll be able to have more success as a whole. And that really comes to getting those experiences, understanding the environment in which you are navigating. And, you know, not just in understanding your role, but remembering too that you can get that experience outside of your job. The world is so much bigger than your current team, your current department. You can you could actually make a career move. You can move to the private sector, another level of government, nonprofit, or you can keep your current role and maybe take on a volunteer opportunity, join a board, join a professional organization, collect those experiences while still keeping your role. And that'll add to that and expand that Mary Poppins bag that I was talking about. So when, you know, the next opportunity comes, you are ready to go. The key here is to focus on those skills and not necessarily just that next milestone. And finally, it really is about bringing that road trip energy. We heard a little bit of this earlier today. So I want you to just bring to mind maybe the last road trip that you took. If it's been too long to remember, schedule one and then maybe, you know, pretend you're going on a road trip. And now that you have that in mind, you know, what are things that you would bring on a good road trip? Like for what would be good to you? What are you going to bring on your road trip? And go ahead and put that in the chat for us real quickly and we'll get a feel for what you might bring.
Snacks for sure, right?
Lots of snacks, all kinds of snacks. Snacks, music, a good playlist. I always like to know where the scenic, like in California on the PCH, there's always turn off points where, you know, you can stop and look at the beautiful ocean and sunset and take a picture. So I always like to know where those are ahead of time so that I can take those. But one of the things, no matter what it is that you're bringing, you're concentrated on, you know, this is a journey and what do I need to do in order to enjoy that journey and really maintain my energy? And when we're looking at our careers, it really is no different than that. And so often what happens though is that when we remember it all for our road trips, but we forget about that on our own careers. And so I encourage you to think about your career as a road trip and really focus on what is it that you need to bring to your career journey to make it the best that it possibly can. Because just like a road trip, taking care of yourself is the job. It's not something that you can just power through this week or month and then you'll get to it. It's something that needs to be integrated into the day-to-day, because without that, there is absolutely no way that we can show up to who we want to be in our roles and have the impact that we want to have on our communities if we aren't at our best. And so think about, you know, what's the equivalent of that playlist that you're going to bring? What's the equivalent of the pit stop or the snacks that you're going to bring that are going to maintain that forever? I think in our morning keynote with Mel Kepler, she said, what if now is forever? And that hit us all a little like different ways. And it's because we do try to power through the day. We do try to power through the week. And then and only then will we then focus on ourselves. And we need to just throw that out. We need to think about, okay, I'm going on this road trip. It is a long drive. I'm in control of it. And what do I need to do to stay focused and really enjoy this so that I can be ready for whatever might come our way? So I want you to just think for yourself, as you're heading into the next part of this, what's one thing that you can do for your own self-care to really enjoy that ride? And then what's something that you haven't been able to do that would give you energy? And then what are you going to stop doing or start doing to prioritize that? Because, while we might enjoy turning the music off for certain legs of that trip, we always want, the good tunes to keep our energy up. We want the snack to keep our energy. We want that pit stop. And think about what is that for your own career planning and journey here in the public sector. So as a recap, we have our 5 go-to tips for modern career planning in the public sector, being able to be agile and flexible and responsive. You can see those 5 there. And if you could take a moment and just pop into the chat, which one of these 5 suggestions was most useful for you today from our session? And while we're waiting for those responses and your reflection, I will turn it over to you, Pearl.
Thanks so much. Wow, that was so great. And I'm really loving the road trip energy analogy. I just think that puts our perspective of our careers in such a different kind of mindset than the usual grinding, trying to get through the day. So that is great. As you guys are putting those action items into the chat, I just want to thank our NextGen Partner Alliance for helping us put the summit together. And don't forget to fill out your CPE evaluation if you want to get that credit. It's in the resource console of this module, and it's also in the resource center in the main environment. And up next, our closing keynotes will be at 3 o'clock Eastern. You can access that session through the conference hall in the main environment, and you'll hear about confronting and eliminating unconscious bias and networking, what you're doing wrong and what you must start doing today. Thank you so much again. Thank you, Dr. Cruz. I hope you all have a lovely afternoon and see you at the keynote.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone.